Hello, welcome to Tina McDonald's Counselling Conversation. Today's conversation is going to be around change and the difficulties that so many of us have with it. Within the context of a counselling session, most of counselling is around change. Things are not working, we're not happy, we need to alter, we need to process, and all of that requires an openness to change. Nothing changes unless changes happen. That's probably one of my all-time favourite quotes, and I came across it when I was actually training, and bizarrely it stuck with me all the years because it just makes total sense. Nothing will change unless changes are made. And changes that we're talking about are not all encompassing the whole picture. We're talking about the little tiny minute changes that then create a ripple, that then start a process of other changes. And so I thought it might be helpful to just look at it from lots of different directions. So for example, the definition: to make something or someone different, to alter or to modify, to replace something or someone with a substitute, a different thought, the processing. An act or a process that varies or transforms from the normal way of doing. That's the Oxford definition. Why are changes so difficult? They take us out of our comfort zone. They take us to places we've not been before, or we've been and we've had difficulty with, or we've tried to and not quite managed. And so we feed ourselves in the background with this story, this scenario. Been there, it doesn't work, not going to do it again because what's the point? I can't. In counselling, we hear an awful lot of I can't. And often it's helpful to ground that into fact. So you actually can't, or I can't because it's difficult, because they're very different things. So I can't because it's difficult doesn't mean I can't. It means I can't approach, I can't access at this point in time, or I need support to even begin to approach or access. I can't. Because I can't doesn't actually mean I can't all of the time. It just means I struggle with. And so therefore, I revert to, it's helpful, it supports me, I find that really difficult, therefore I'm not going to. And really what we do is we help to strip away, because often the two things that are going on, one is avoidance of change, because change takes us to the unknown rather than the known. Even if it's not helpful, even if it's not where we want to be, we know it, it's familiar. And so it takes us away from the familiar. And often, therefore, the emotional content, the feeling behind that is, I'm fearful. I'm scared of change because it takes me to the unknown rather than to the known. And so sometimes we use shields of, I'm too old for change. I've always done it like that. What's the point? Because they're not changing. And absolutely, we can't change others. But what we can do is we can change how we respond, how we react, or how we even approach. And that in turn creates that baby step. That in turn creates that little moment of change that is within our control. And so if we do that bit differently, then the rest of it has the opportunity to follow suit or not. But it also means on the return that can be where the change lies. If I do something differently here at the beginning, then it might not come back in the same direction, or I might not spiral into the same place I always go with that particular approach. I change that approach. And so as we go on, we recognise that these patterns we create, that we offer ourselves, are our comfort zone. And it's very easy to stay in a comfort zone, to say continually, I can't change, I'm too old. What would be the point? All of these things that we use as barriers and avoidance, and we convince ourselves that we don't have the agency, the capability to actually do something different. But of course we do. And so sometimes we need to just be curious and just challenge that way of thinking, that same old repetitive, because actually what we're saying is, I can't change, I can't do that. So therefore I am choosing to stay stuck in this comfort zone of difficulty, because that's really what the correlation is. And so sometimes it's helpful to just be brave and sit with it for 2 minutes longer than we might do, a couple of seconds even, to just kind of say, why is it easier for me to offer myself the same difficulty rather than the difficulties of something different that might lead me to a better outcome? And that's where the curiosity lies. What does change represent? How does that impact us? I know for myself, if it's taking me out of a comfort zone, it can be anxiety producing, it can be that I need to make lists and I need to make plans to make myself feel supported. But that's different by confronting and changing than actually saying, well, I just can't do that. And of course there will be things that are too fearful to do, too big to access. But that's not really where change lies. Change lies within challenging ourselves on the little stuff, not the big stuff, the little stuff. And then that encourages us to look at how many little things we could change in order to take us somewhere otherwise we wouldn't be going to. And that's really the point of change. Change is a positive thing, offering ourselves that different moment, and that we can survive doing something differently. We don't have to keep doing the same. We can try it differently and try it for a little while and see how that feels and adjust and sort as it goes. But the openness to change is often the sticking point. How does change sit with you? Let's hope this opens that conversation, because change is really behind everything, especially in the counselling world. And so for me, it's always helpful to be curious around, what does change represent? How can we approach it in a different way? How is it helpful to not have change in your life over a difficult subject? Starting a conversation. As always, I hope that's helpful. And thank you for listening to the end. Please leave some comments and also suggestions for other counselling waffles. As always, take care. Thank you. Bye-bye.